Let's start a podcast about our mental health for no good reason why. Let's call it Mind Cake.
Hello everybody and welcome to another slice of Mind Cake. Oh, yeah, that's right, Lee's not here this week. I'm flying solo. It's me, Paul Beeson. Welcome. I hope you're all doing fabulously well since we last were in your ears. Yeah, Lee's not here this week. He is otherwise engaged, so to try and keep to schedule, I am flying solo. So I will just be doing a very short introduction to today's episode, and the next time we're on, we will dissect this one a little bit as well as the other one. You don't want to hear me droning on by myself, do you? A few weeks ago, we were very excited to have Benny Voncken on the show. Benny is one of the coolest people we've had on the podcast, in my opinion. He had a lot of really good stuff to say about Stoicism. I'll let him do all the talking and explaining about what that all is. So, prepare yourselves. All right, everybody, here we are with another slice of Mind Cake, and we are privileged and very pleased to be joined today by Benny Voncken. Hello, Benny.
Hi, Paul. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, my friend. How are you?
Yeah, good. I'm glad to be on here. I love the name of the show and I love the vibe that you have. So I'm excited to have this conversation.
Oh, do you know, you are the first person that we've ever had on that said that.
Oh, really? The what part?
that they love the name of it, like the Mind Cake kind of brand.
I like it. Yeah, I like it. It's very intriguing.
So what we originally planned when we started doing Mind Cake was that we kind of came up with the idea of, because cakes have layers like a human, like a mind or whatever. But the other part of it was we were going to have cake every time we did an episode. That lasted for about 2 or 3 weeks, and it's just kind of stopped now.
Okay. Maybe it's something nice to but obviously, as long as you've been doing it, eating cake every week, that's going to have its impact as well, right?
Indeed, and we're trying to promote, good mental health and well-being and stuff. So maybe it's good that we don't do that anymore.
Eating a piece of mind cake every episode is a nice way to look at it.
Well, we appreciate that, Benny. Thank you so much. Now, Benny, I've got to be honest, I don't know a huge amount about what you're going to talk about today. So this is going to be a really interesting learning curve for me personally, and I'm sure for our listeners out there. So first of all, can you explain what it is that you do?
Yeah, that's a nice way to start. Like I'm a Stoic coach. So I coach people based on the ancient philosophy of Stoicism, partly because I live according to that philosophy. At least I try to do. It's not an easy one, and so it's difficult to really get it going. But at least I'm trying, doing my best, and that's all that's asked for, right? So I use that as my experience as a coach to guide people to better living, to find more balance, and to just become a better, complete person. And as an experienced coach, I help people that way. But also we're not here to turn people into Stoics. That's, putting that out there first. So we use our experience. But if people want to know more about Stoicism, we can kind of give them maybe a shortcut, to piggyback on all the years that we've learned and we've been working on it, so that they can kind of jumpstart and use the practices that most fit their lives. So that's for people who want to learn more about Stoicism, but even just people who want to find more balance, more peace in their life. That's where Stoicism can be a very useful philosophy to help people get that position in life.
Excellent. Could you explain, as simply as possible, what Stoicism actually is as a way of life? Like you said, you live your life by that philosophy. So what does that kind of entail?
The best way to kind of explain it to people what it really is like more of a Western, more pragmatic version of Buddhism. So the main goal of Stoicism is to live a eudaimonic life, which means to live a peaceful and calm life. And one of the best, the chief good of Stoicism is virtue. So we have wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. And those are the things you want to kind of filter your actions through. So if you have an impression of something happened and you need to do something, you will ask yourself, is it wise? Is it just? I need courage to do it, and I need to have moderation or temperance. The second part is to live in accordance with your nature. So you have to ask yourself, who am I? Go back to the pre-Socratic, to the Socratic the aspect of it is like, who am I? Investigate who you are. and kind of build your life based on that. And if you do that correctly, and there's some tools, there's some other things we can talk about, but if you do that correctly and you apply correct judgment and your reason and logic to whatever happens, you will find that you will be more at peace because you are doing the right thing. You are doing the just thing. So your conscience wouldn't have to be, working and thinking and overthinking and pondering and ruminating and all these things, but you'll be doing the right thing for yourself, but also for the society around you. Because Stoicism
Oh.
is working on yourself, but it's like what they say at the airplane, put your oxygen mask on first and then help others. So if you
Mhm.
become a better person yourself, then you'll also be a better person for the world around you.
Oh, that's such a wonderful outlook to have.
Yeah,
That's
right.
amazing.
But it's
Um,
difficult to get there. It's not easy.
well, hopefully we'll get into that as well,
Yeah, yeah.
because we all want to learn about your journey. So, which came first for you? Was it an interest in Stoicism and the philosophy behind it, or was it an interest in life coaching?
I think they kind of came together at more or less at the same time. And a lot of times when we speak to people, and that's my story is just similar, when people start going towards the philosophy of life, that's mainly my thing that I wish to promote for people, for the listeners, not necessarily for Stoicism, but just to really start creating their own philosophy of life. And sadly enough, it usually starts when people are down on the lucks, when some bad thing happened. It's not like when you're on the top of the hill shouting, "Yeah, I've made it," that you say, "Let me improve my life." That's usually not when you start doing that, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, and I guess that's where, because Stoicism, in the like, just the definition of it is like someone who is suffering or has been through some kind of pain or trauma, and but not necessarily outwardly showing that they're having that experience. Is that kind of a
That's the lowercase s stoicism,
yeah,
where you have
yeah,
that stiff upper lip where you don't show it. And
yes,
the paradoxal thing is that if you apply stoicism in the right way, the outward look would still be the same, right? But
hmm,
it's all about the mechanisms and the things that you do behind the scenes and internally that make that different. Because if you are just outwardly not showing any emotions, you might be going through inner turmoil and not reach that peace of mind, right? So
yeah,
and that's the main thing about Stoicism is like how you do this, why you do this, and all the things that's working behind the facade.
yeah. So it's not keeping the emotions hidden and keeping them bottled up. It's processing them so you have that outward peace, I suppose. Is that a way to think
Yeah, and
about
the
it?
inner peace. Yeah, and
Hmm.
if you bottle the emotions up, it's like a volcano. At one point, it's gonna erupt, right? That these things you can't really control as much as people might think. So one of the main things regarding to emotions, which is a common misconception about Stoicism, is again what you mentioned, that bottling up. But the Stoics use it as a source of information. So for example, I get angry at something. Okay, let me first, and there's steps, right? But at one point you're gonna look into what is causing you to be angry, right? You're gonna
Hmm.
look at that trigger, and then you're gonna evaluate that. It's like, is that something I can control? Is that something I can't control? What is the real relation to it? How much of the weight that I'm putting on it? Marcus Aurelius says, if you can choose not to be harmed. If you choose not to be harmed, then you're not going to be harmed. So if someone calls me a bad name, I place a negative label on that word that that person calls me. And I can say, oh, you've called me a certain word that I find offensive, so now I'm angry. But you could say, oh, you just said a word to me, and that's fine. That's your opinion. So that's where kind of Stoicism looks at the external events and you try to objectively evaluate them and say, is this something good or is this something bad? And then you just say, okay, maybe I need to do this action. Maybe I need to take care of this. But as long as you're virtuous and according to nature, then it shouldn't really disturb your peace.
Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating. I guess it's so, like you sort of alluded to just a minute ago. It's usually when someone is kind of down on their luck or going through a bad time, which is when this kind of thing could prove helpful. Because like you said, if you're on top of the world, you aren't going to be having these kind of thoughts and those sort of thought processes. The modern world is just chaos and stressful, and it's crazy at times. And we're living in a pretty bleak time as well, politically, socially. So how can Stoicism help people find a bit of calm amidst the chaos of the modern world? Because it is an ancient philosophy in its sort of origin, isn't it? So how is it relevant in today's world?
That's very interesting. And if you read the text from 2,500 years ago, like 2,000 years ago, from Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, I think those times were more turbulent than ours, right? Back in the Roman days, the Greek days, you would walk on the streets and you never knew what might happen, and just the life there. And we live in kind of, at least in the Western world, we have quite some luxury, right? We
Hmm.
have running water, toilets, all these things they didn't have back then. But if you read them, it's so easy to take those texts and to place them in modern day, right? Because even then, Marcus Aurelius has a quote where he lists things that cause disturbance to people's minds, which is also money, career, possessions, all of those things. So when we there's a couple of things that we can practice in modern days. For example, first, not to not to want too much, or checking our desires or our aversions, because those are the things that cause us turmoil. So we are now kind of driven to live a certain successful life, right? Where we want to have money, we want to have status, fame, or especially now on social media, you want to have all the likes and all the followers. But the more you want them, and then when you don't get them, that's causing you distress.
Hmm.
So the Stoics very much live in the moment. They say amor fati, accept your fate, live in the moment, and everything here is fine. Everything here is good. And we all have the tools necessary to deal with the moment. So it sounds like, and this is always something difficult to explain, but the Stoics say like we have the internal world, the external world, and externally nothing is good or bad. And fate does what it needs to do. Nature does what it needs to do. It's pure reason and logic. It's cause and effect, right? So they believe in determinism. So things happen, there's an effect, and another thing happens. That all purely logic, right? So there's nothing bad. We place that label again on whether something is good or bad. For example, if it rains outside, for the farmer who hasn't had rain for 3 months, that's a blessing. But if I'm on a holiday and that's my first day and it's raining, that's the worst thing that could have happened. So the same rain has different kind of effects on people. So we place that label. And obviously there are, bad things that we as a society can label as bad and say, yeah, this isn't something that we want. But even then, we still have the opportunity to be good. So even in these times of turmoil, and if people would apply that just a little bit more, I think the world would look differently. But even if you have bad things happen to you, you could say, okay, something happened that I didn't want to happen, but at least I can still be a good person. At least I can still be virtuous. At least I can still do the right thing. And that's what pretty much Stoicism asks of you, to be the good person in those moments of, difficulty.
Wow. It's fascinating. And it's something that's come up in the past on our podcast where we've had on more than one occasion, we've had a guest like yourself on. And one of the things that's come up is, living in the moment, or trying to focus on the here and now rather than dwelling on the past or worrying about the future. I think we flippantly referred to it as like Hakuna Matata from The Lion King, that kind of, there's no worries. You can't change the past. It hurts and all that, all the classic Lion King quotes, but it is that kind of thing. And it's something that, well, I'm certainly not particularly good at, but I don't actually know how much I genuinely consider that I'm living in the moment. Do you know what I mean? I don't know how often I really stop and consider that being in the moment and not worrying about the past and the future. And how do you get to a place where you can kind of switch off from those kind of worries or anxieties?
And that's not an easy switch to do, right? It's like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
now I'm not going to worry about things, but it's all about practice. And again, this is a philosophy that's very much based on their aim is the sage, right? This perfect mythical person or creature, whatever it is, that sits at the table with the gods because they have pure reason and logic, and all of that's great stuff, But then I'm here, just a humble human being, flawed, to the bone, and trying to be better. And that's what they ask, just to be better, emulate that chief good, the perfect version, and try to get there as whatever way you can. And so when we try to look at the living in the moment, one big aspect of that is creating a sense of gratitude. Because as you said, we look at the past, oh, look at my mistakes. We can change them as like, oh, look at the things that I've done, and maybe I should have done them better. I can learn from them and
Mm-hmm.
move on, right? Or the things in the future, I don't know if it's actually going to happen. So why should I worry about something that might not even happen? Seneca has a great quote. It says like, we suffer more in imagination than we do in reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
We make things a lot bigger than they are. So one of the things that I tell myself when I'm, for example, at night sleeping or can't sleep and thinking about things, worrying, or I ask myself, what can I do about it right now? Is there something I can do about it? If there is, for example, even at 3 at night, if I can send an email or send a message, I can just do it and get it out of my head, and I'm focused on sleeping, right? But
Hmm.
if there's
Hmm.
not, then I just, okay, what is the best thing that I need to do right now? That's sleep. And then if we practice those things, we can have these little mantras, if you will, to bring us back into that moment. So, oh, I feel bad about the past. Why? It happened. It's gone. I've learned from it. I'm the person I am now because of that event. The same thing with the future. So if we try to learn and see about that, then we can really create a sense of gratitude for being here, accepting who we are, and embracing us fully. I think that that's something that we need to have a little bit more self-care, a little bit more self-love, and say, okay, I've done maybe some bad things in the past, but I'm here now, and they all made me who I am, and I should be grateful for it.
Absolutely. It's a wonderful outlook to have as well. Learning from your mistakes is so important,
Yeah.
but so many people, and myself, and I include myself in this, we beat ourselves up about the past, but it's like you say, it's gone. We need to move away from that or learn from it and become better. That's the whole point of your life experience, isn't it? Is to grow from that. But it's amazing how it sounds so simple when you put it like that, and so many people have real trouble letting go of the past and moving on. I've got so many questions to ask, and I'm so excited. I don't know where to begin. What I think I'd like to know is how did your journey with Stoicism actually begin?
Yeah, that started, I think about 6 years ago, where I really jumped into the rabbit hole, if you will. And it started when I went through a divorce. Well, that was when my relationship started ending. As we said, we start with a glorious moment of when your life seems to fall apart. The future kind of breaks away.
Mm-hmm.
And I luckily had some good support, some good friends who showed me some good books. I wanted to pick up on some more reading. And I kind of diagnosed myself with an existential crisis. I don't know why, but I picked up a book called Introduction into Existentialism. And it kind of compared a lot of the philosophies, existentialism, the absurdism, Epicureanism, but also the Stoics came there. And that's where I really felt identified with what they said and how they said it. That a lot of these philosophies aren't as different from each other that we think. It's a lot of the thing is just about the nuances, the words they use, the feeling that they give you. And for me, when I read Epictetus, who was a slave turned philosophical teacher, he gave me that verbal slap in the face, I always call it. He was very strict and stern, and he was talking to his people. It's like, oh, you wretch, and you should be doing this, and how. So, and I needed that at that moment. So
Mm-hmm.
I created a set of rules for myself when I was going through this difficult time because I was a heavy drinker before. I've stopped drinking completely 4.5 years ago because I couldn't control it. It controlled me, and I figured that's not a good thing for me to be in. I told myself not to drink, go exercise, walk, read, find some hobby, and just take care of yourself mentally, but also physically, to just kind of give yourself that boost to be in a better situation to reflect on life and see what you want to do. And from there on, I just started reading. I just started gobbling everything up, all the books, all the ancient texts, but more the contemporary texts as well. Then, unfortunately, I loved playing football, and my knee, I twisted my knee in many ways, but the right one, and that ended. So that was another practice for me, and luckily had studied a little bit of Stoicism at that time, and I felt, okay, I could still walk. Running is probably no longer an option for me unless I go do some exercise and another surgery here and there and all that stuff. But I'm good, where I am right now. I'm fine. Let me focus on this. So it does help you get a better perspective of what's happening to you. And one of the main things that really changed my outlook on that is, like, I didn't consider myself as a victim anymore, which happened to me a lot, where I was like, oh, look at me, poor me, and all these bad things are happening to me. And then you go through a hospital and you see all these other people far worse off, and you say, it's not happening to me as a person. It's happening. And I can either address it or attach it to me, or I just say, no, this happened, and now I have a chance to make something out of it. And that's kind of where my journey started. And then I started writing about it because, again, another part of me was I was not good at dealing with criticism. So what better way to find criticism than to go online? So I started writing my blog, putting it on all the posts on all the pages for the Stoics. And I found a lot of critique, which was great. You guess the Stoics are very calm and collected in their responses, but not all of them are that way. So they can be quite harsh, which was a very good learning school for me. Now, People can say or write things about me, and I'll look at the truth, the validity of it. And if there's none, then okay, fine, that's your opinion. And if there is, then I'll just go up and study and learn more. And so that's helping me. So that's kind of where my journey start again, from something that you don't think is good, but now when I look back at it, and happens, a lot of the times, if you don't get the job you wanted, if you didn't get picked for the team, or if you're going for divorce, at that moment it seems like the worst thing to happen. But now when I look back at the divorce, I was like, that was actually a good thing for me to have happened. I got to rediscover myself and redesign my life and just the way that I wanted. And now I'm far better off than where I was back then.
Wow. Well, thank you for being so honest as well. And it takes us back to what you said earlier. It's in those times of desperation when you have the clarity to look, sort of get involved in this kind of thing. And there's a real sense of bravery, though, like you said, like starting to, put yourself out there online, like sort of putting yourself in the firing line, as it were. But that's how you learn to deal with that kind of outward judgment. If someone was perhaps going through a tough time like you have, like a divorce or something like that, if someone was feeling lost or stuck in life, what would be the first piece of advice that you would offer to someone who was having a tough time?
I would probably ask them to examine what's really happening and also to focus on their own inner strength. I feel that we forget that we are far stronger than we actually are. That's why maybe future possible bad events might scare us as much, because we don't see us having the capability of coping or dealing with these things. So when you go through it, it's going to be very difficult. But I think first of all, it would be to kind of get the easy things in line. As I said, I created those rules for myself. No drinking. People tend to kind of go for that. To help them alleviate some of that pain. But alcohol is actually a depressant, and it's not a very good thing that can get you into the downward spiral very quick. And I experienced that as well. And so I think getting those external basics in good shape, getting yourself in good shape, and then starting, find support, start talking to it about people, especially men. They don't really feel that they have the opportunity, or they don't feel like, oh, I should just deal with this by myself. But that's not something that is, we shouldn't, we should be able to talk to people about it and share it. So I think part of that would be like all of that together, like look at what are you doing? What are your behaviors showing from this event, right? And then from there you can see, okay, well, maybe I should tone it down, some temperance. We can use the virtues, but it kind of depends on the situation where you are in. But having that moment to reflect, taking a pause, not overreacting, not going into extremes would be a good way to start.
Oh, that's great advice. If anybody out there is having a tough time, wise words indeed. And I think it's really important, especially talking about like men having channels that they can talk about stuff. I had my own sort of depression and things a few years ago. And out of my kind of close male friendship group, I was the first person. I'm not necessarily saying I was the first person to experience that, but I was the first one in the group to sort of actively talk about it with my friends. So there was lots of kind of individual trips, and probably not the best place, but trips to the pub, because that's how we solve all our problems in Scotland. Anything good or anything bad, it's solved by going to the pub, either to drown your sorrows or to celebrate. So, but there's lots of individual conversations, and I found, with each different person, I was kind of getting a little bit deeper into what perhaps that was going on there. And then a few years down the line now, those friends are opening up to me now, because there's now it's a two-way channel of communication now. And I think we're all better off for that. Yeah. So thank you for bringing that up. It's such an important thing.
And it takes a lot of courage to do, right? So if I hear your story, that's not something that's, and men or women, it's not easy to talk about your problems, because we want to show people, oh, look how well I'm off, how well I'm doing. But as you said, what that does, it also allows other people to open up to you when they need it. And that's really the relationships that we want to build, to show that, hey, I'm here for you. And whenever you need me, vice versa, it works both ways. So yeah, that's great to hear.
So you're also a life coach, is that right?
Yeah, we offer Stoic life coaching, yeah.
Was life coaching something you were doing before the Stoicism kind of got involved, or has your career as a coach kind of come out of that same experience?
Yeah, I'd say it was a happy marriage, not like the other the other one was also like no, there was I don't want to talk too much about it was a good I would say that was one of the best things that happened to me, but also the divorce was one of the better things that happened to me. So, but it was a happy marriage from those things kind of came together. As I was we were all going through COVID, the lockdowns and everything, and I was living in Dubai at the time. I worked as a teacher. I've been working as a teacher for 12 years, well, before, making the career shift.
Hmm.
And and I think in a sense, as a teacher, you're also kind of working as a coach because you're looking at your students. You're not just teaching them, you're imparting the knowledge that you have, but you're also looking at how does the student learn? Do they have, do I need to give them some more confidence here, or do I need to listen to them? So there's also a lot of these coaching aspects that come along. And as I saw the impending lockdowns coming, I figured I've got to use this time because I'm going to be stuck in my little studio in Dubai by myself for a long time.
Hmm.
So that's where I started going to Stoic of not to life coaching courses. So I applied to many of them. I started studying up on them, reading a lot, practicing with friends and family. Just and I'm a good listener. Maybe now I'm talking a lot, but I people tell me that I'm a good listener, and that's some of the qualities that I naturally have that I think make me a good coach. So when I started with the Stoic journey and the kind of coaching journey at the same time, I never made that connection until a few years ago, where someone told me, "It's like, why don't you start coaching?" Right? Because I quit my job in Dubai, I sold everything I had. I just had a backpack and another rucksack for my little office, and I went traveling. I went to South America, to the US, and that's where I started writing my blog more and focusing on that. And someone said, "Why don't you combine those two?" And for me, that was the perfect way to share this knowledge, right? That I feel that can help a lot of people. Again, not necessarily to turn them into Stoics, but the power of philosophy to really examine your life. And with Stoicism and with the coaching to help people more directly with specific problems, to give them that moment where they can speak and where they can share. And we do get a lot of men asking for our services and for our help, because I do feel that this is again a great platform for men to open up and to share what they're going through, and then get some more pragmatic, applicable tools for them to use. I think that's something that more people are looking for. Not the quick, easy fixes, but at least some kind of crutches to hold on to when they go through these difficult moments and difficult spells in their lives.
Yeah, and I think we live in a time now where mental health is much more spoken about, and people are much more aware of different kinds of mental health struggles. And it's great that you've kind of blossomed into that career in a time where people are much more open to having those kind of discussions, and it's a great thing to be doing. So tip my hat to you, my friend.
Thank you.
What did you used to teach out of interest?
English.
All right.
I'm from the Netherlands, and then I
Yes.
moved to Spain and was teaching English.
Oh wow. I used to be a drama teacher.
Okay, nice.
So similar thing. I had a bout of severe depression and was signed off teaching. And while I was signed off, I decided to go back to my first love, which was acting, performing, and writing. So that's what I do now, as well
Oh,
as the
wow.
podcast. But yeah, I it was the trauma and the horrible sort of experience I had in the teaching profession that led me onto the path that I'm on now. And actually, having the discussions that we've already had this evening, it's that way of not dwelling on that, because that experience got me out of teaching and it got me doing what I'm doing now. And it's made me who I am, and it's put me on this path. And my partner that I live with now, we probably wouldn't have met if my path had not gone the way it was going. And so much good has come out of that dark time, you know? Do you get a lot of teachers coming your way?
Not yet, I try to reach out. I've been working on some kind of teacher trainings as well, for the more mental aspect for teachers instead of the teaching aspect. But
Mhm.
no, it's also it's yeah, I think more people could have used it. I've been a natural stoic, apparently people say, but teaching in Dubai was an interesting experience to say the least. It was something that I will keep in my mind for a long time. But it's also, great to hear from your story that you can see, and this is something that people, it's difficult to see in those moments, but people forget that they see the darkness and they don't see if you like I always compare it to when you have a physical injury like a cut. At that moment, you're just like, oh, this is never going to end, right? But then give it time and it will heal. And then you say, okay, it's gone. But we tend to forget that, right? So that's why it's great to have examples like you for people going through those dark times. Just, give it time, find support, work through it, and there will be maybe benefits. And maybe at one point you can embrace it and love it to say, this is, I kind of needed that, right? I needed that
Yeah.
moment to grow and to become a better version of me.
Oh, absolutely. It's all part of the journey. Time is a healer. I mean, that's a cliche, but it's a cliche because it's true.
Yeah.
It's just, I think we're quite impatient these days as well. We want results quickly and we want things to change quickly, but we need to be more patient, perhaps, especially when dealing with trauma and stuff like that. Just before we carry on as well, so you left Dubai with like all your worldly belongings in a backpack,
Yeah.
and you just decided to was it a conscious like I need to get away from Dubai, so I'm going to just go anywhere, or was it you wanted to see more of the world? Like what took you on your journey around the world?
I've lived like again, I'm from the Netherlands, but I've lived abroad for almost 14 years, 15 years now. So I lived in Spain for 7 years and then Dubai for five. I guess during the last 2 years I've kind of realized that I'm an explorer at heart. I was asked like why am I traveling? At one point there was this kind of escapism, this feeling like, oh, if I stay too long in one place, people will find out who I really am and I'll start getting disappointed, all of these kind of, but that's my self-image that I had back in the day. It wasn't very, strong and big. I was always having these doubts. And now I feel like I like to explore. I like to go to new places. I like to, experience different cultures. I speak Spanish, so one of the reasons why I went to South America was because I wanted to learn more different dialects of Spanish and experience those, those ways of using the language and also the cultures there. So when I left Dubai, and well, maybe a little bit backtracking as during my first years of that separation with my ex, at one point I was driving home, I was like, okay, what do I want from life? So I started creating my little sales pitch, my little elevator pitch, and went something like this. I told myself, I don't want to have to work. I want to have the freedom of time and place to follow my passions and that way help as many people as I can. So that doesn't, I've been working harder now since I've left my job, I have to be honest, but it's something because I like it. I love to do it. And, especially when COVID hit and my parents are getting older and I had some family members passing away and I couldn't go there because, as you know, as a teacher, your holidays are, extensive, but they're also fixed, right?
Yeah.
You can't just leave whenever you want. So I found that difficult. And I wanted to have the freedom to be at my parents' place when I needed to be there if they needed me. And I go back every year and I spend quite some time with them, which is also like something that I can recommend. I'm fortunate to still have my parents here, but it's great to live with them as an adult and see
Mm-hmm.
how they live and how they kind of shaped who you are. So for me, that was great. But yeah, I left Dubai and I think I've been a minimalist in, for a long time. But then you go to a place like Dubai, which is the complete opposite. So
Yes.
I just left with that, just making sure that everything in my backpack, and I went house and pet sitting. So because I didn't have a lot of money, I had my savings, but I was still building something, I didn't even know what I was building, and that kind of turned into Via Stoica right now, and where we offer the coaching and everything. But at that time, that wasn't even it's existing. I was just writing
Mhm.
my blog, speaking on spaces on X, and whatever, and kind of finding my way. And so, but I was enjoying it while staying at other people's homes, watching after their pets, their dogs and cats in Ecuador and Argentina, and all these places. So
Wow.
that was the kind of life that I was looking for after Dubai, to explore that myself, but also the world around me.
The minimalism, you are still in that way of life. Are you still nomadic almost, like just spend a bit of time somewhere and then just decide to move on when you feel it's the right time?
Yeah, I cannot see how, like, I'm currently in Spain, in the south of Spain, with my sister and her dog, and we drove down with a camper van because she had bought a camper van and she said, hey, do you want to join me? And I was staying with my parents for a while. I was like, yeah, of course. And now we're here, rented an apartment. We're going back in a week and a half to the Netherlands, and then I've got some things there. I might even go to Scotland at one point in May, so I'm looking forward to that. Never been. Sounds like
Oh,
a lovely country.
when you get here, myself and Lee will have to meet you for a coffee or something.
Yeah, great. And we can also go to the pub. No, I'm not sure if they have some non-alcoholic Guinness, but
Oh, they do. In fact, we when we had our production meeting on Friday, there was a fridge full of non-alcoholic beer behind the bar. And yeah, we chose to ignore it. But yeah, most places you'll be absolutely fine. But that'd be amazing if you could come because you've never been to Scotland.
I've never been, and I always wanted to go, and I think there's a good moment of me to go in May. I've got some things planned in the Netherlands, and so I might just do that. I've never been to Greece either, someone who's been studying on philosophy has never been there. That's kind of I don't know if that disqualifies me.
I was going to say that should be like Mecca for you. That should
Yeah,
be.
yeah.
I would have thought that would have been the first place that you would have gone.
Well, Rome, I know I love Rome. I've been there a few times, but sometimes things don't happen the way you want it to go, and but no, and after that, I don't know. The world is open, for me to go and travel and see where I want to go.
But it's just such a great sort of space to be in where you have that kind of outlook. I can see, like maybe some people would be terrified by that kind of way of life, the sort of the lack of boundaries, the lack of security, for want of a better word. But this is all part of what you do and how you live your life, right? That sort of outlook, living in the moment.
I've always been a person who gets used to things very much. I don't, and maybe, I don't know, this sometimes I've been called a robot, but I don't miss things very much. I just kind of, and the traveling has really made me far more grateful in the moment when I'm meeting people. And then when the time passes and you gotta separate ways, that's also good because you're going, your different ways and you've enjoyed the company. And this is, what the Stoics say, and it sounds a little bit morbid, but for example, Epictetus says in one of his discourses, he says, when you kiss your child goodnight, softly whisper, "Tomorrow you will die." Right? And it's like, ooh, that sounds a little bit dark. But what he's really saying is there is a possibility that you might not have this person around, right? We're mortal, remind that. So when you are with them, spend the time with them. Not be on your phone, just focus on being there with them. And I read this in a great book by Eric Weiner, The Socrates Express, where he talked about different philosophers, and he talked about Simone Weil, and she said, "Attention is love." Right? When you give something your attention, that's you giving them your love. And I think that that's something that we are missing now with a lot of people, where
Mm-hmm.
where we don't listen to each other, where we're just thinking about what am I going to say, or the next thing, what am I going to do next? So we are missing that connection, and that's something that the Stoics really try to urge us on, is to say, be with the people that you are with right now. And then when they go to separate ways, or maybe when they pass away, you've had that time with them. And that's what you've got to focus on, because that's the precious part. When they're gone, they're gone. But those memories, those moments, you've had them and you've lived them. And if you remind yourself of that transitional nature that we are, then you can really start to appreciate again, the present moment.
Oh, absolutely. It's just reminded me of last year, myself and my friend went over to Germany for the Euros, just for one of the Scotland games. We didn't have tickets. We just went to soak up the atmosphere. And the night before the game, we were sat in a bar having some food, and it was so busy. And this guy was on his own, and he got sat at our table. And it turned out he was a Belgian guy who had driven to, oh, where were we staying? I've forgotten where we were staying. Dusseldorf. So he'd driven to Dusseldorf just for work for the day, and he was staying over. So we just sat and but it was that thing. We weren't just ignoring him. We weren't on our phones. We sat, we had a great time. We ate together, we had a few drinks. We then stayed out and watched the football. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, we went our separate ways. And the next day, I said to my friend, "Oh, did you get his Instagram or anything? Because it'd be a good way to keep in touch." And none of us had sort of thought about staying in touch with each other, even though we'd had a wonderful evening. But it is that kind of thing. That was just that part, and we went our separate ways. But that's fine as well, because we I think we were just living in the moment then, and
Yeah.
and that was great. But it just what you were saying there just sort of reminded me of that, and that was a great few days in Germany. But that was pure living in the moment for
Yeah.
48 hours, just enjoying all these different people from different countries, all just being together in one place. Just yeah, oh, it's fabulous. But it's that kind of thing. We should do that stuff much more.
And that's why these kind of events, they lend themselves, right, perfectly, where people come together from different cultures. And as you travel around and you meet people from different parts of the world, you see that everybody wants the same thing in its base, to want to have a peaceful life, to live together for themselves, for the people around them, and to have a good life. And that's something that we're missing often, that we want to have more. And that's where that want and desire comes into place. Like, no, I want to have this, then you can't have this. So if we live a little bit more in moderation and more temperance, then things can spread out a little bit more even across the world, and then it would lift everybody up a little bit more.
Yeah. Oh, beautifully said. Are there any sort of daily exercises or routines that you either personally do or that you would recommend to people, to our listeners, perhaps, to get a bit more mental clarity, or because some people meditate every day, that's their thing. What would you do, or what would you recommend that from a Stoic's point of view?
Yeah, I can recommend from a Stoic point of view, but I don't do it myself very well, and that's journaling. Although
Ah,
I do journal in a sense that every morning and every evening started writing some things. I use because I like the limitation of characters that make my thoughts a little bit more concise. And
mm.
people have told me that it turns into poetry, it turned into kind of poetry. And I use an AI tool to make a little image, and I place that on Instagram. So if people want to check that out, they can follow my little brain farts, as I call them.
Yeah, I've had a look at those, and they're really cool. So yeah,
Oh, really?
I urge everybody else listening to what is your Instagram
It's
tag?
it's Benny underscore via Stoica.
There we go. We'll put that in our link tree and everything as well, so people will be able to find that. But yeah,
Okay.
they're lovely little snapshots into your thought process, I guess.
Yeah, and sometimes when I read them, it's like, what was I thinking? But that's the nice thing about people interpret it different ways. So I get some feedback from it's like, oh, I really like this, and it's specific words. But so the Stoics, they look at a journaling technique where they say you can write about three things that didn't go well today. They say before you go to bed, examine your life. An unexamined life is not worth living. That's what Socrates used to say, and the Stoics believe that as well. So you can write down three things that didn't go well, one thing that did go well, and one thing that you would like to improve on tomorrow, right? So those are kind of the reflection tools. And you have meditation, as you mentioned, and there's different mantras. But I always kind of urge people to experiment what works for them best. You can have micro journaling where you say, I'm just going to write down for 2 minutes anything that comes in my head, or you can just have a little walk, or just sit with yourself. Or what I do, just kind of write the first kind of thoughts that come in your mind, or things that you're dealing with. And I think that's something that when we look at the self-help kind of sector, the books and all those things, they show you one way that one person found that improved their life. The same as with diets. Oh, you got to fast, you got to use keto. It's like, yeah, that worked for you, which is great. I'm going to try it, I'm going to experiment, but then I can adjust it and make it my own. We don't have to rigidly follow what someone else has done. The same with Stoicism. Make it your own. I'm not saying here like, oh, you got to live. And there's different ways of people approaching Stoicism, very orthodox. It's like, this is what this person said, so this is the only truth. No, it's a philosophy. We can work with it. And I think that that's the beauty of life, where we can go on that exploration and figure out what's working for me. So we have the journaling, and there's different techniques that we can use in specific moments. Like I said, the amor fati, but also memento mori. Remember that you will die. It gives you a different perspective on different problems, that it's all transition and it changes everything. But also negative visualization, the dichotomy of control. All those things are tools and techniques that we can use in specific moments. But you've got to make them your own. You've got to try to mold them and shape them and use them, because that's, again, figuring out who you are is part of that journey. And I think that that's why we're here. And one of the most wonderful things of being alive is knowing who you are, and learning how to adapt that in your life to the world around you.
Oh, that's brilliant. It's so funny, and you'll appreciate this as a former teacher. Self-reflection and self-evaluation is something that you would actively encourage your pupils to do. You would have to do it as a teacher. You'd have to evaluate your own performance in the classroom. And the most important thing, reflecting on you, yourself, your health, your mental health, your physical health, you as a human, is something that we don't do we don't do a lot, and we don't do very well, I think. And I'm guilty of it as well. But just when you frame it like that, you go, it's baffling. We'll evaluate so much of our lives rather than the really important thing, which is who we are.
Because it's easier to look at other people and say,
Mhm.
oh, they should have done this better. But when you point a finger to yourself, that's sometimes like opening Pandora's box, where, oh, now suddenly all these things come out and I didn't really want to see them, right? I didn't
Mhm.
want to. And I wrote about confidence just last weekend, and there was a quote from Marcus Aurelius that I liked. He said, you got to dig deep, where the goodness is, the water. And once you reach that well, it keeps bubbling up, right? It just keeps flowing out because you've reached. Once you make peace with yourself, you can go, figure things out and embrace all the things that you've done and who you are. But having that self-reflection, as you said, is key. And if you the world around us is a mirror, right? If I say, oh, this person has done something bad, and I'm reflecting something back on me. And
Hmm.
that if we look at it that way, then we do a lot more reflection than we think. We just, try to stay, close our eyes and our mind for it.
Now, you mentioned memento mori. It's mori, right? Not mori, mori. Does it?
I think
Is it
Maury, I'm not
mori?
sure
Memento
yeah,
mori.
that's how I
And
usually pronounce it. Maybe you're right.
yeah, no, but I always thought it was memento mori, and then I heard a song by The Streets, and
Hmm.
he pronounces it memento mori. I think probably because it rhymes with die,
Okay.
so he uses it in the song. But we'll say memento mori. So you just mentioned that a minute ago, sort of reflecting on your own mortality, sort of, or mortality in general. How does that mindset kind of help with your mental health? Because some people could reflect on mortality, and that could take them to quite a dark place, I presume, because it's not something that I've really thought about. But yeah, so could you explain a little bit more about memento mori?
Yeah, so I think, and I wrote about this at one point on the blog as well, that death needs a rebranding because we talk about death in a negative way, right? Death
Mm-hmm.
is the end of everything, and it's the worst thing that can happen to us. But the Stoics would say it's like that's silly because it happens to everyone. It's the most natural thing to happen. Once you're born, at one point you will die, and that's the thing. So if we start to give that more of a better place, not to put it in a bad light, not to put it in a good light, just to say like this is going to happen. And once we take that fear out of that, once we start trying, because there's so many people trying to avoid dying and say, oh, I want to live forever. Well, what does that look like? You're going to float around in space after a billion years when, and like that's because that's people don't think about that. You want to live
Mm-hmm.
longer. And this is where the Stoics talk about something like a preferred indifference, where they say, okay, I want to be healthy rather than ill, right? I want to have money rather than poor. I want to have, these are the preferred indifferences, but they don't necessarily make it a good thing. It's all depending on how you use it. So if you are just focused on not dying, the thing that you're not focusing on is living. So
Mm-hmm.
you're forgetting to live. So getting to peace with the fact that we are mortal again brings you back to more gratitude is in life itself. Seneca said, in life it's because of death that you are precious in my eyes, because it has that sense of urgency, because we are here for a limited time. So in fact, if we learn to shape around, and that's why we need philosophy. Michel de Montaigne had an essay called To Philosophize is to Learn How to Die, which is a wonderful one to read. And but that's what it is. We need to think about that. And all of these things that we undergo are kind of mini deaths. Even when you go to sleep, you say goodbye to the day.
Mm-hmm.
That day is gone. And that's what dying is, to learn to let go. So once you are at peace with yourself, once you know, okay, I've done everything I had to do, I've done my best. Maybe I've failed many times of not getting the things that I wanted to do, but I did my best. I tried. So then when you reach that last moment, you say, hey, I've lived a good life. I've done my best. I've did it the best way I could go. And now it's my time to go. And once you find that, and that's not easy, right? That's again, that's where you want to work towards. But at least starting to talk about it will help. And that's where when people go to a dark place, find support, find someone around you, talk about it. Why is it scary? What is it really that worries you about it? And once you start to unravel it and see the true nature of it, then you can get better, get a better relationship with it. And that's where we want to work towards.
Yeah, it's like having a healthy relationship with something that is inevitable,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah, rather than fearing it. But it is, I guess, as you get older, I suppose as I've got older, I'm in my mid 40s now, so I do think about death more than I used to. Because when you're young, you're invincible, aren't you? You don't think about stuff in those terms. And I'm a father now as well. You get to a point where you do start to reflect on it a little bit more as well. And I was 45 last year, and you're kind of like, well, go, I'm kind of at the halfway point if I'm lucky, you know. And I've got to kind of get out of that funk and go, well, really enjoy the next however many years you have left, because that's it. That's all you've got,
Yeah, and enjoy the next day. Start there,
Hmm.
like because we don't know if how many days will follow, but just waking up could be already, hey, I'm here again. That's another day, another moment. Let me try to make the best out of it. And it's good to think about where you want to go in life to follow a certain track, a certain path. But you got to take that, that saying goes like you take a journey started with one step. Well, that one step is today, is tomorrow. And whether the next day comes, I don't know, but at least I'm living it now. And then if it doesn't come, then, well, then nothing to worry about anymore. If it does, then I will keep doing what I do.
Brilliant. You've quoted a lot of Stoics so far tonight. Some of the quotes are just lovely. What is the one quote that you either love the most or stands out, or that you kind of go back to the most, like the one quote or the one outlook that really gets you?
That's a that's a good one, and I will probably revert back to the one that really showed me the practicality of the philosophy. And there are quotes like "to stand up straight, not straighten," which is a short one, but from Marcus Aurelius' The Meditations. If people haven't read it, it's a very short little book with it's a personal diary of the the old Roman emperor, never meant for publication. So you read his inner thoughts, very a lot of stoicism involved there, and also about how he lived as an emperor, more or less. You can read it there. But at one point he goes around and he says, that person is bound to act that way. It's like getting angry at a fig tree for secreting juice, and by the way, soon you'll be dead, dead and soon forgotten, right? And this was coming when I started and I was reading the meditations. And as I read it, I pictured this colleague of mine in the school who was always, I don't know, trying to do these little tricks and whatever he was doing, it was always getting me frustrated. And at one point, and maybe as a teacher you can relate to this, as I was being observed, he walked into my class and he started teaching my lesson as I was being observed. And I looked at my supervisor and was like, what's going on here, right? So these are the little tricks that he was kind of playing and, throwing us under the bus whenever he
Yeah.
could. So this was getting me frustrated, but I read that quote and I figured I cannot change this person. He's going to do whatever he's going to do whenever he feels like it, right? It's up to me to deal with it in a better way. So I looked, and what that really did is it kind of gave me a little bit of distance of what was going on, right? He was a trigger for me. So now I started looking at him from a different perspective. I saw like, this is the person who he is. He's going to do his little things, and I can now step back, see what he's doing, either maybe laugh at it, maybe get out of the way, maybe give him some pushback, choose the right action, but at least not have it affect my mental state. And the next day I went to school and I remember standing in front of him and he was saying some things and I just thought about myself and I was like, yeah, this is what he's doing. He's just doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing. And now I've got to learn to deal with it better. And just that little thought gave me that distance or that space to remove that frustration. So for me, that was the real quote that helped me like see the practicality of the philosophy. And then I read all the other quotes different as well because I started looking at how can I apply this? Where does this have value for me?
Mm-hmm. That's the one that hooked you really
Yeah,
big time, got you in.
yeah.
Excellent. You've traveled about since your teaching days ended and this journey began. You'll see Stoics everywhere you go, right? Are there any particular places you've been or societies where it's more just kind of embedded in their culture and who they are?
That's a good question. I don't know. Maybe, I've been told about the Dutchies. They're quite cold and quite, direct to people, but I'm not sure if they're that stoic because they can also be quite, frustrating and angry with people. But yeah, I think it is a personality trait that a lot of more people have than they think because they might not understand the philosophy itself. So we've had a lot of people come on to these spaces that we host on X, and a lot of women showed up and I said, "Oh, I was a Stoic, but I didn't even know it." So maybe I think if you go to the northern part of Europe, I don't know a lot of other parts in the world, maybe there you find a lot of Stoics who just go through life with equanimity and say, okay, this is what it is, and let's deal with it the best way we can.
Ah, excellent. Oh, and Lee Crompton has rejoined us. Hello, mate.
Hey,
Hello. Yes, I've been doing what I needed to do, but listening with great interest.
Oh,
great.
I keep wanting to nip in, but I thought no, just focus on. I'm reading a book that was recommended by one of our listeners, Aaron Balak. about deep work by Cal Morgan. Cal Morgan? And just being focused. Anyway, yes or no, I was listening to the bit about yeah, how you can label things and just like you say, you can choose, like you were saying, this guy that used to wind you up. You can choose to be annoyed by that, or you can choose to just go, okay. And one of my favorite things lately is go, if you cannot change someone or you cannot get your own way, you just go, well, you know what? You do you and I'll do me. And you can choose not to, and again, it's easier said than done sometimes, but just choose not to get wound up by things that just really get under your skin.
Yeah, it's like shifting your perspective on the on the matter, isn't it? Yeah,
And maybe trying to see the humor in it. And that's where, like, when we talked about memento mori, putting things in perspective. We are this little tiny dot in space and whatever, and
Mm.
then you have people worrying and getting upset about all of these things that are kind of trivial. So I tend to kind of laugh at it as like, not without, not being condescending, but just inside is like, what's really going on here? Is like, you're angry at me for this. Okay, that's fine. That's your prerogative, and my prerogative is not to really care about that stuff. But if I can help you alleviate that frustration, let me find it. Otherwise, I can just go my merry way.
Yes, I am one for getting involved in the drama. And all you're doing by getting involved with the drama is feeding the drama. And then again, I think we've said before, Paul, that you've only got, a finite amount of energy in a day. And if you choose to expend that energy getting wrapped up in the drama, and I can't believe it, and then you regurgitate. Do you know what? He's just not only you get involved in the drama, but he's just said to me, blah blah blah, and then you're regurgitating it to someone else and just getting all wound up and using all that energy up when you go, do you know what? It doesn't matter. The guy, one of our favorite sayings from Dr. Jan is "Don't be a dick," and
Yeah.
I think that's a good. I know it's not one of your more well-known Stoic phrases, but I think it should be up there. That would
Yeah,
be my
yeah,
favorite
and
thing.
maybe it kind of got lost in translation. But if you read Epictetus, he probably would have used that kind of phrasing, now in the modern day.
I think so. I think we should take away from this episode, don't be a dick. And if
Yeah,
if a lot more people weren't dicks, then the world would be a better place.
yeah.
yeah, I agree.
Hmm.
Is there anything that you want to like? You're dying to ask Lee
Yes.
since you've sort of come in a bit
Now,
later. Is there
now
anything
I've
that you?
piggybacked into the
Yeah.
thing.
No, but
Yes.
you feel free. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I know I'm going back on, but as for someone who's had multiple existential crises, is that the plural of crisis?
Crises.
What was the name of the
Price
book that
high.
you said?
Crisis. I like that.
I read a book by Olson. I can't remember his first name. It's called Introduction into Existentialism.
That's what I need.
Yeah, it's a nice
Introduction.
little short book, but it has a lot of different philosophies, and it looks at it from different angles. And I think that
Okay.
those are great books to kind of get a bearing of what might work. And
Yeah, yeah. No, I find that I find that a struggle when you start to think about, why are we here? What are we doing? What is the meaning? And we are just these insignificant bits of carbon on a bigger bit of carbon floating around in the universe. And then that's when I sort of get the dark cloud descends, when you go, what is the point in anything? Because like, what does it mean? What does it matter? And then and then you find that nothing matters. And in honesty, I don't know whether this is stoicism in a nutshell or not, but it doesn't. I think, sorry, what I'm trying to say is that
Lee does this a lot, Benny. You'll.
I love
sorry,
it.
you'll be glad I haven't been on for the last hour.
No, 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 I like it.
Um, so yeah, so whilst I find that depressing, in that you're like, well, what it doesn't matter. So Liverpool were playing at the weekend, or Bournemouth are playing at the weekend. You're like, well, if they win the league or if they win a match, so what? It doesn't nothing matters. And I suppose, and that could be a depressing thought. However, flipping that, when I was told I had 4 to 6 months to live, I realised that that is true. The fact that you hadn't sent that work email, or you'd put on 2 pounds in weight, or you hadn't whatever, you hadn't mown the lawn and it'd been a couple of weeks, or the house was untidy. None of that shit did matter. It was the only thing that mattered actually was, this is going to sound really corny, but was love and my family. And I would have done anything. Again, what you were saying, to be in that moment. And if you're going to give your attention to something, give your full attention to that, because actually, that's the only thing that's how I felt anyway when I thought my days were numbered. Um, that's the only thing that mattered was my loved ones around me, and the rest of it, there's not really much else that did matter. And yeah, it's kind of the flip side of existential crisis, I guess.
I think
You
it's a
know,
good thing that people should look into a little bit more, right? When, as you said, people start to, they kind of surrender their lives to chasing a career and having to write that email and worrying about all those things. And these are not the things that really matter in life. As you said, it's all
no,
about, what you do. And again, we can be the best version of ourselves for the people around us. And if you can be that person for, your family members, then what you get back is so much more valuable than sending that email or making a little bit more money here or there. Just having that time with those people around you,
absolutely.
that's what really matters. And then you give meaning to your life yourself. You give it, okay, and that's another thing why, for example, you have the virtues in Stoicism, but also to live in accordance to your nature, to be who
Mhm,
you are, to follow
mhm.
what you should be doing. That then adds meaning to what you are doing, not just for yourself, but for those around you. Maybe that person that is sitting next to you needs just a little bit more attention or needs a little bit more support, and that will make them be better at that moment or happier. And that could mean so much more to a person than, yeah, football match or having gone made a career move or whatever. That is what really is important.
Yeah, I mean, there's again, I'm many tangents I could go off on there. I mean, was having a conversation with the mother-in-law the other day, and I was saying about, again, on the back of the conversation we had with Aaron Ballack, that I'm trying to sort of limit social media consumption and news consumption and whatever, because of the effects of, just bringing the mood down or whatever. And she said, if only we could have, and I said, well, you never hear the good news. And she says, yeah, if only we could have another month like we did. And I would like to get your take on this. Well, and yours, Benny, as someone who wasn't in the UK, but the 2012 Olympics, when there was just, the whole country was just buzzing. I seem to remember the same Euro '96. Obviously, that won't resonate with so many people, I don't think, because it was obviously football. But there was just because you had all the, you didn't necessarily hear the bad news. You were just excited about the tournament, and you were hearing good news, and there was just this carnival atmosphere, and the whole mood of the nation changed because you put that value is where you're putting your attention and where you're putting your focus. And I think, we forget sometimes that, yeah, we are bombarded relentlessly by bad news because that's what gets the clicks. And sometimes, just remember what you have got, whether it's your family, your loved ones, or whatever, and make the most of that. But it's easier said than done. I mean, I've said this, listeners, excuse me, I've said this a few times that, when I was diagnosed, that if they said, right, well, you can have another 6 months, but we're going to have to cut all your arms and, both your arms and legs off, I'd have gone do it. I just wanted to see if I could see my kids grow up for another 12 months. Like they could have done anything to me. And here we are 4 years on, where I'm just at the bottom of the stairs and we're late for gymnastics. Why are you trying to put that on the wrong foot again? And it's just, and you have to remind yourself, this is all I ever wanted. This is the good stuff. But yes, it's not easy when you get sucked back into normal life. But anyway, we had a very interesting guest on. You couldn't make it, Paul. We had there's a comedian. I don't know if you're aware of the comedian Arthur Smith. His brother, Dr. Richard Smith, wrote for the Lancet, and again, it relates to something you were saying earlier about. So he wrote an article for the medical journal about death and our relationship with death, and he was saying exactly the same as you, that it shouldn't be something. It should be something that's celebrated because we're all going to die, and actually, it's a natural way of clearing out the dead wood. And if nobody died, then you know it would be a very crowded place, and actually, you'd probably get a bit bored because like when you've goes back to the book that his brother mentioned, the history of the world in 10.5 chapters, where this guy doesn't die. You can opt to die, but nobody dies naturally. And he was so bored of playing all the golf courses in the world and basically getting better and better and better at golf and going like around St Andrews in 18 holes and having various lovers and being great at playing the violin or whatever he was, because he's had years and years and years and years to practice, and he read all the books in the world, that you go, well, do you know what? I think I'm just going to die, because it's just there comes a point where living forever is probably more, let's say, depressing than actually dying. Anyway, as Paul will know, there's no
I'm glad
real
you came
question.
here to cheer us up, Lee.
There's no, but what I've said is that as per normal, I've arrived and there are no real questions. I'm just putting my take on what I've heard, and I just think it's fascinating.
I think that that book, for sure, by Olson, sounds
Yes,
interesting.
I think
And
I need to read that.
and the other one, was it Marcus Aurelius? You said it was like his journal, I suppose. He was kind of journaling back then. He was
Yeah, the Meditations.
Yes,
That's a really good book to read. And Epictetus has a little handbook written by one of his students. So we have a little reading list for beginners on Stoicism, with a list of good books to kind of follow, and have a little track on like to read this one and then this one, and to kind of follow up on that. But the thing is, there's so many good books out there. When I talk about it, it's like, oh, read this one, read that one.
Yeah. Do you know, I've thoroughly enjoyed chatting to you tonight, Benny. It's been life affirming. I would go as far as to say it's been life affirming from my perspective.
Oh, that's great to hear.
I feel like $1 million after that chat.
Yeah, I
really
tried. I
do.
tried desperately to bring the mood down at the end, but it doesn't appear to have worked, Benny.
Oh, that's
No.
I'm a Stoic, you know.
Yeah, well, that's it. I've just
You
shifted
do
my
you.
perspective. Yeah, you do you, Lee. And
Yeah.
I can't change that. So I'm just gonna, dance over here.
Yeah, and I could have those discussions about existentialism, the meaning of life, for hours. So
Wow.
Well,
There's an episode on in
yeah,
itself.
yeah.
So Lee,
Exactly.
I don't know if you caught it earlier. Benny said he might be coming to Scotland in May.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
So yeah,
So that is that when we're doing the existential episode from a pub.
We could.
the live existentialist episode.
Yeah.
And then I can remember the things, when I drink the non-alcoholic
take the
beverages.
notes.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
Excellent.
did say that the next time we have a meeting, a mind cake meeting in the pub, we're going to ask if anyone wants to apply for the position of minute taker. So
Just have a Zoom call ready. They record it now, right? You can have the minutes there.
do they?
That's true. Yeah, you can transcribe it and everything, can't you, these days?
Yeah, there's like an AI companion, and it kind of takes notes on the meetings.
But where's the fun in that though, Benny? It's better when you've got a hangover on the Saturday. Well, it's not better when you've got a hangover on the Saturday morning,
Yeah.
trying to remember. I mean, I know I
Saturday
appreciate
was a struggle.
Saturday was a struggle. I had to take my now 5-year-old to gymnastics.
Was it you that was putting your shoes on the wrong feet on Saturday
It was
morning?
me. And he goes, they are on the right feet, Daddy, you klutz. Yeah, so we shouldn't really be advocating drinking on the podcast, because it's it doesn't do any good for your mental health. It's not big, it's not clever, kids. And we're old enough to know better, Paul.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it?
Mm.
But
Anyway,
then it's a national pastime, right?
Oh, for sure, absolutely. Is it,
okay, well, let us know when you're coming over in May then.
Yeah, I'll send you out a message. It's not confirmed yet, but I'm definitely thinking about it. Never been there. Love to go to Scotland, and it's one of the places that's high on my list.
It's
Excellent.
very nice. As an interloper myself, it's all right. It's not bad.
Nice.
It's
That's
all right.
positive.
That's his
Sorry.
positive. That's as positive as I get, Benny.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Now, Benny, at this point in our interviews, we usually get our guests to plug themselves, so
Okay.
you can let our listeners know where to find your website, your Insta, X, whatever it is that you use and do. Now is your time to shine, my friend.
Well, this is where I shine, This is one of those things that I struggle with, promote myself and all that stuff. No, the easiest thing would be to go to viastoica.com, the website. You'll find everything there. You have like the podcast we have. You find links there as well we record weekly episodes on Stoicism and all of that stuff. So you can find it there. And I think if you Google me, then with Benny Voncken or Benny underscore via Stoica, you'll find me on X, on Instagram. Again, where I write those little daily little notes that I write, the reflection things, you'll find them there. But also the posts and everything that we record weekly, or that I post weekly. And we have a newsletter on the website. You can sign up. And if anyone wants to have a free consultation where they're just like, hey, I want to chat or see what happens, then you can sign up there as well. So. Yeah, we can do that when I come to Scotland.
You can
we
do that when we go to Scotland, yeah. So we can start with existentialism.
Oh, nice.
Are we on? Am I right in thinking we're on LinkedIn, Benny?
Oh yeah, I'm also on LinkedIn. Yeah, that's a good reminder.
On LinkedIn, yeah.
See, this is where I shine.
Yes, that's all right. I'll keep you straight, Benny. Don't you worry about that.
Thank you very much.
You're right.
LinkedIn is the one I always forget.
Yeah.
And I never go on it. Maybe I should go on that more.
That's good. Yeah, I've had some really good connections there.
Yeah, it's probably. Although, have you seen that? I don't know if you follow this account on Twitter or X. It's called The State of LinkedIn.
All right.
And it screenshots all the horrendous, clearly fabricated sort of motivational. My 2-year-old looked at me and said, "Mother," like just all this stupid stuff. But if you like the lighter side of LinkedIn, that's one to watch.
Nice. I'm gonna look into that one.
Yeah. Wise words, mate.
Thank you, mate. Yeah. Anything else from your end, Lee?
No, sorry. I've interrupted at the end there, but
no, it's good to have you on.
Nothing from me. That was fascinating, and yes, if we can do a catch up in May, that would be fantastic.
Yes, and
great.
Yeah, and once again, Benny, thank you so much for giving up your time and your sort of honest and frank outlooks on life have been really refreshing, and it's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and thank you for having me on. As I said at the beginning, I love the name Mind Cake, and I like what you guys doing. So keep that going. And in May, we can maybe record one in person.
As long as you still like the podcast after you've spoken to Paul. You liked it at the beginning. Does he like it at the end? Who knows?
Oh no, I had a great time.
We don't care, Benny, because you do you.
Yeah.
And we'll do us. So
exactly.
He likes it even better now. That's what he said. You must have missed that, Lee.
Yeah. Selective hearing, right?
Nice one.
No, thanks so much, Benny. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
So there we go. That was Benny Voncken. I'm sure on listening to that you will all think that what he had to say was so interesting and relevant. And I've got to be honest, I even said in the podcast, like, I felt like $1 million after speaking to him. When I was editing this episode and re-listening to all the stuff that we chatted about, it genuinely made me feel really good again. I, for sure, am going to try and take some of what Benny said on and try to respond to situations when they arise in a more stoic manner. Because this dude is so chilled out. He's got a very positive outlook on life, and all it takes is a little shift of perspective. So I'm going to endeavour to do that. And if anything that Benny said resonated with you guys out there, I would urge you to try and do the same. Shift that bit of perspective and enjoy a chilled existence. Now, like I said at the beginning of the show, I'm not going to witter on for ages myself. I'll wait till Lee comes back because, if anybody likes to witter, it's Mr. Crompton. Also, I should just apologise. I'm recording this in the kitchen today because the office is being used by the lovely Gail for work meetings. So if you can hear Fraser the Freezer in the background buzzing, I do apologise. So just before we call it a day, I better do me housekeeping.
Oh, Beeson's housekeeping. Oh, how very lovely.
You can find us on Instagram at Mindcake Podcast. You can find us on Facebook if you search for Mindcake. And of course, we'd like to hear from you. So you can email us at sliceofmindcake@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't done so already, if you could pop on to wherever you get your podcasts from and give us a little 5-star review, that would be awesome. The reviews really do help people find the show, and if you think that what we do is worthy of that, then please fill your boots. Do tell your friends. So yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. Take care of yourselves and each other. I think Jerry Springer used to say that, didn't he? Anyway, the sentiment is there. Look after yourselves, take care, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next episode. Catch you.
Let's start a podcast about our mental health for no good reason why. Let's call it